It was supposed to be just another ordinary day, another long shift in the heat of the desert. The smell of dust and sand seemed to hang in the air, and all I could think about was getting through the day.
Oh.
My mind was on work, on the mission, on anything that kept me distracted from the loneliness of being so far from home. But then my phone buzzed. It was an unknown number. Almost ignored it, but something in my gut told me to pick up. Hello? Hey man, it's Mark. My best friend, the one I left behind when I shipped out. His voice wasn't the usual upbeat tone I was used to hearing. There was a weight to it, something serious. What's up, Mark? Everything all right? I asked, trying to shake off the unease creeping into my voice. Dude, I don't know how to tell you this, but... He paused, like he wasn't sure how to continue. Your wife, she changed the family trust. It's all legal now, signed and everything. My mind couldn't catch up to the words. What, the family trust? The very thing we'd set up when we bought our house, when we planned for the future, for our kids. My throat went dry. My heart seemed to stop for a second. What do you mean changed it? I asked, my voice hoarse. I could feel the walls of the room closing in on me. I don't know the details, man. But she's made herself the sole beneficiary. It's all in her name now. It's everything you two worked for, it's hers. I went numb. My hands trembled as I held the phone. It's the desert around me, the hum of the military base. Everything felt so distant, so irrelevant. I was miles away, unable to do anything. I wanted to scream. I wanted to yell. To get in a car and drive straight back home, but I couldn't. I was trapped in this foreign place, stuck in the chaos of a war zone while my life back home fell. Apart, what the hell is going on? I asked, more to myself than to Mark. I'm sorry, man. I wish I could tell you more. The line went quiet. I didn't say anything for a long time. I just stared at the phone in my hand, as if I could somehow make sense of it. I wasn't even sure what I was feeling. Anger, confusion, disbelief. My head spun as I tried to figure out what had just happened. How could she have done this? Why hadn't she told me? Was this the beginning of the end? In that moment, everything I thought I knew about my marriage, my family, shattered. And as I stood there, in the middle of a foreign land, the world around me felt colder than ever before. We'd met in college. I still remember the first time I saw her across the crowded coffee shop, her laugh echoing over the noise of the barista's machine. I was captivated by how easy she made everything seem. I had this light about her, this warmth that drew people in without her even trying. I knew, even then, she was someone special. From there, things just fell into place. We started dating, and it felt like we clicked in a way that I didn't think was possible. Our love was built on quiet moments, spontaneous adventures, and a deep understanding of one another. She understood me better than I understood myself at times. By the time we'd finished college, I knew I wanted to spend my life with her. Proposed during a weekend getaway to the mountains. We sat under the stars, the cold air making our breath visible, and I promised to always be there for her. She said yes, with a smile that still feels like the best moment of my life. Our wedding was beautiful, small, intimate, filled with our closest friends and family. There were no extravagant frills, no unnecessary details, just us and the promise we made to each other. We'd been through a lot together already. Late-night study sessions, long road trips. The loss of loved ones, but nothing felt more real than the day we said I do. It was the start of everything we hoped for. We bought our first house shortly after. It was a small place, but it was ours. I still remember the smell of fresh paint, the excitement of unpacking boxes, the warmth of her hand in mine as we walked through our front door for the first time. We were building something together. We talked about kids, about our dreams of a future, a family. The family trust was one of those big decisions. We'd sat down in a lawyer's office one afternoon, the air thick with the weight of what we were doing. We had a plan in place, something for our kids, something to protect them, no matter what happened. We had worked through the details, making sure everything was taken care of. I trusted her completely in that moment. We were partners in every sense of the word. Over the years, things had shifted a bit, of course. Life got busy, work, the kids, everything. But even during the chaos, we never stopped communicating. At least that's what I thought. She was always there, supportive, my anchor. We balanced each other out. I trusted her judgment in every aspect of our lives. That trust was the foundation of everything we had. Without it, I don't know what I would have done. I never questioned it. She was the one I turned to, the one I relied on, the one who had my back no matter what. She always said we were a team, and I believed her. But now, sitting here in a desert hundreds of miles away, I couldn't help but wonder, had I been the only one who saw us as a team? I should have noticed it sooner. Maybe I was too caught up in my work, too focused on the mission ahead. But looking back, the signs were there. They were small, almost insignificant at first. Just little things that didn't add up. It started with the way she looked at me sometimes. It was a look I couldn't place. When she thought I wasn't paying attention, her eyes would drift to the window, or she'd pause mid-sentence as if she were thinking about something else entirely. I'd ask her if everything was all right, and she'd give me that soft, reassuring smile. "Of course I'm fine," she'd say. And I believed her. But it wasn't just her expressions. It was the way conversations started to feel. We'd talk about the future, and she'd shift the topic quickly, like she wasn't ready to discuss what was ahead. I chalked it up to stress. Life had a way of throwing curveballs after all. Then there was the way she'd get so absorbed in her phone. It wasn't unusual for her to be on it, especially with the kids, the social media, all the family stuff. But there were days when I'd catch her texting someone, and as soon as she saw me looking, she'd quickly close the app and look away. I tried to ignore it. I told myself it was nothing. It was probably just her friends or work, right? To worry about. She was always so busy, always so on top of things. She was my rock. She always had been. The night before I left for deployment, I remember sitting on the couch packing my things. The kids had just gone to bed, and the house was quiet. She was sitting beside me, but there was a distance between us, an unspoken gap that I couldn't close no matter how hard I tried. "You okay?" I asked, glancing over at her. She nodded, but the smile she gave me was different. It was tight. Forced, like she was trying to convince both me and herself that everything was fine. She touched my arm, just lightly, but it didn't feel the same. It didn't have the warmth it used to. "Asterisk, I'll be fine," she said softly. "Just make sure you come back safe." I tried to reassure her, the usual promises I made before every deployment. I told her I loved her. I told her I'd be back. Before we knew it, but even as the words left my mouth, I knew something was wrong. I just couldn't figure out what it was. The next day I left. I boarded that plane, heading into the unknown, and part of me thought it was just pre-deployment. Nerves. But looking back now, I realized I was running away from the truth. I didn't want to admit that things weren't right. I didn't want to face the changes that had already begun to creep into our lives. When I finally saw that email, when Mark told me about the trust that's, when it all came crashing down, maybe I had been too blind to see the shift, maybe. I had ignored the signs because I didn't want to face what was happening. But now, the pieces were starting to fall into place, and they didn't look anything like I thought they would. Asterisk, I didn't want to believe it. There was a part of me that told me I was wrong, that it was some sort of misunderstanding. But when I opened that email, I felt my entire world crack open. It was a legal document, the family trust agreement. I had known what it looked like, the papers we'd signed together years ago, securing our future. But this was different. The words jumped out at me, and each one cut deeper than the last. The changes were glaring. She had made herself the sole beneficiary. Every dollar, every asset, everything we had built together, all of it, now belonged to her. I wasn't even listed as a secondary beneficiary. It was like I didn't even exist in her plans anymore. Asterisk, I stared at the screen, my heart pounding in my chest. I had to blink a few times, trying to make sense of the words, but they didn't change. No matter how many times I reread the document, it still said the same thing. Why? How could she have done this without saying a word? How could she make such a significant decision about our family, our children, without even consulting me? She was supposed to be my partner, my equal. We had always talked about everything. We had always been on the same page, especially when it came to the big stuff. I could hear her voice in my head telling me that we were a team. But nothing would ever break us apart. But here, in front of me, was the proof that I had been nothing. More than a pawn in a game I didn't even know we were playing. The weight of the betrayal settled in my chest, cold and heavy. It was a gut punch. I felt like I had been blindsided, left out of the decisions that should have mattered most. And yet the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. Secrecy, the distance between us. All the signs I had ignored now screamed at me, accusing me of being a fool. It wasn't just about the money or the trust or the house. It was about the trust, the real trust that had been broken. How could she do this? How could she take something so important, something so sacred to both of us, and twist it into something so cold, so selfish? I felt numb. My head spun, and for a moment, I couldn't breathe. I didn't know what to do. What could I do? I was thousands of miles away, stuck in a war zone, unable to even call her. I tried to steady myself, but the feelings were overwhelming. Anger, confusion, heartache, Keech. One crashing over me like a wave, leaving me stranded and helpless. I could hardly focus on anything else. The mission, my duties, they all seemed so distant. So insignificant now. All I could think about was the woman I had trusted, the woman I had loved. And now all I felt was betrayal. How could I have been so blind? The hours that followed were a blur. My hands shook as I closed the email, trying to shove the reality of what I had just read into the back of my mind. But it was impossible. The words kept replaying in my head, echoing louder each time. Sole beneficiary, not listed. Future, gone. I tried to focus on anything, but my mind kept drifting back to that damn document. How could she make that decision without me? I kept asking myself over and over what I had missed. How had I been so oblivious? I walked around the barracks, unable to shake the suffocating feeling that was crushing me. The air felt thin, the walls closing in. I couldn't escape the weight of it. My comrades went about their tasks, but I was lost in my own head, like I was watching myself from a distance. I didn't want to believe it. Part of me thought maybe there had been a mistake. Maybe Mark had misunderstood, or maybe I had misread the document. I kept telling myself that everything would make sense when I got home, that this was just some bad dream I'd wake up from. But deep down, I knew it wasn't a dream. It was real, it had happened, and there was no going back. I called her that night. My voice felt hollow, like it was coming from someone else. I couldn't bring myself to ask the question directly why, because I already knew the answer. I could feel it in my gut. The silence that stretched between us on the phone was unbearable. It wasn't just the miles that separated us anymore. It was something deeper, something unspoken, something that had cracked wide open in that instant. I don't understand, I said, my voice betraying the confusion I was trying so hard to hide. Why didn't you tell me about this? There was a pause on the other end of the line. I could hear the faint hum of background noise, but nothing she said felt real. It was as if she were speaking from behind a wall, a barrier that I couldn't break through no matter how hard I tried. I didn't think it was necessary, she said. Her voice was calm. It was something I had to do, The words stung. It made it clear that this was not a decision we had made together. This wasn't about us anymore. This was about her, and only. Her words didn't offer any answers, only more questions. I felt like I was floating, disconnected from the world around me. The world I had known. It's the world I had worked so hard to build. It felt like it had vanished into thin air. I ended the call quickly. Not sure if I was angry, hurt, or just completely empty. I spent the next few days in a daze, drifting through my duties without really being there. Every conversation felt like it was happening to someone else. I couldn't focus. The weight of the betrayal kept pressing down on me, making it hard to breathe, hard to think. How had we come to this? The woman I had trusted, my partner, the one I had believed in, the one I had given everything to, had made a decision that shook everything we had built. I couldn't feel anything anymore. Not joy, not anger, just numb. It was as though the world had gone silent. And I was left alone in a space that felt too big, too empty. I couldn't escape. I didn't know how to move forward. Didn't know what came next. I just knew that I couldn't go back to the way things were before. The days blurred together in a haze of exhaustion and silence. I tried to focus on my duties, to pull myself together, but the weight of what I was carrying was unbearable. Each task felt meaningless, as though the world around me had turned into a dull, gray fog. The faces of my comrades, their voices, the sounds of the bass, they were all distant. Like I was watching everything through a thick window. I couldn't connect, couldn't care. My mind kept replaying the betrayal, that cold, hard document. Her voice telling me it was something she had to do. It felt like I was suffocating under the pressure of it all. The overwhelming sense of abandonment was suffocating. How could she do this? How could I not have seen it coming? Was I that blind? In the late hours of the night, the darkness around me felt even more isolating. I'd lie in my bunk, staring up at the ceiling, my mind racing. I could hear the sounds of the bass settling, the distant hum of equipment, but all I could feel was an aching emptiness. The loneliness was louder than anything else. It was as if I had lost a part of myself, and there was no way to get it back. I could feel the tears pushing against the walls I had built inside. But I didn't let them out. I couldn't. There was no room for weakness here, not in the middle of a war zone. Not when I was supposed to be a soldier, strong, unwavering. But inside, I was breaking apart. I walked the base at night. The cold desert air biting at my skin, my boots crunching on the gravel. Everything felt surreal. The harsh starlit sky above me seemed so distant, so cold, just like everything else. I could smell the dust in the air, and it mixed with the bitterness in my throat. I wanted to scream, to shout at the universe too, demand why this was happening to me. But I didn't. I couldn't. Instead, I kept walking. Letting the emptiness swallow me whole, I reached the edge of the base, where the light from the barracks flickered in the distance. I stood there for a long time, staring at the darkness that stretched out in front of me, knowing that the only thing I had left in this moment was that silence, that hollow space where everything I had ever known had been torn apart. How had I gotten here? How had my life, my marriage, become something unrecognizable in the blink of an eye? I closed my eyes and tried to remember what it felt like before the trust was broken, before the betrayal, before this crushing weight had settled in my chest. But it was hard. It was hard to remember what happiness felt like. I felt like I was losing myself in all of it. The tears finally came, but they felt hollow, like a release I didn't even know I needed. I couldn't stop them. It wasn't just about her or the trust. It was about everything, the life I had thought I was building, the future I had imagined, the love I thought would always be there. I was alone. And in that loneliness, I realized just how much I had lost. I didn't know if I'd ever find my way back. The flight home was long, agonizingly slow. Each minute ticked by, each hour dragging me further from the desert and closer to something I wasn't ready to face. I had imagined this moment 1,000 times, but now, as I sat in that cramped seat, I realized I had no idea how to prepare for what waited for me on the other side. When the plane finally touched down, part of me wanted to turn around too, get back on the plane and keep flying, anywhere but home. But home was where I had to go. As much as I tried to push it out of my mind, I knew what was waiting for me there. The house, the silence, the ghosts of everything that used to be. When I walked through the door, I was hit with a wave of cold emptiness. It was the kind of silence that felt deafening, as if the walls were pressing in on me, suffocating me in the stillness. The house, once full of laughter, love, and the chaotic energy of our family, now felt like a hollow shell. The smell of her perfume still lingered faintly in the air, a cruel reminder of what I had lost. I walked through the room slowly, almost afraid to move too quickly, afraid that the world might shatter if I did. The living room where we used to sit together in the evenings, the kitchen where we'd share quiet meals, the bedroom that had once been a sanctuary, it was all the same. But it wasn't. The life we had built together felt like a memory that had already faded. The furniture was in the same place, the photos on the walls, our pictures, our moments, but it felt like I was walking through someone else's life, not mine, not ours. I stood in the middle of the living room, staring at the empty space. The silence felt suffocating. Could almost hear the echoes of our past, the laughter, the arguments, the late-night talks about everything and nothing. But now, all I could hear was the emptiness. I tried to imagine her there, but the picture in my mind wasn't the woman I'd married. It wasn't the woman who had promised to stand by me, to share everything with me. It was a stranger. Betrayal had twisted everything, and in that moment, the woman I had loved, the one who had shared my hopes and dreams, felt like a distant memory. It's like someone I could never truly reach again. I walked to our bedroom where the bed we had shared for years sat untouched. The sheets were still rumpled, as if she had just left. I ran my fingers across the surface, but it felt wrong. Nothing felt real. I was here, in the place that had once been my home, and yet I couldn't shake the feeling that I was trapped. In a ghost story, her absence was everywhere. It was in the way the house seemed to suffocate me, in the absence of her voice, her presence, her touch. I tried to call her, but the call went unanswered. I wasn't surprised. Part of me knew I wouldn't get an explanation. She had made her choice, and I was left to pick up the pieces. I sat down on the couch, feeling the weight of the silence press down on me. I wanted to scream, to punch the walls, to tear everything apart. But I couldn't. There was nothing left to tear apart. It was all gone. I was alone. And in that loneliness, I realized how deep the isolation went. Not just the physical distance between us, but the emotional chasm that had opened up between us. I had no idea who she was anymore. I didn't know who I was either. All I knew was that I was standing in the ruins of a life I had thought was unbreakable. I couldn't keep running from this. I knew I had to face her, even though every part of me wanted to avoid it. I had already spent so many sleepless nights imagining this moment, but nothing could have prepared me for the reality of it. I was standing outside the house, the one we had shared, and I was about to confront her. The door opened with a creak, and there she was. She looked the same, but there was something about her, something in the way she stood there. Arms crossed, eyes avoiding mine, that felt different. She wasn't the woman I remembered. She wasn't the woman I trusted. "Can we talk?" I asked, my voice rough. It felt strange even hearing myself say those words. It had been so long since we'd talked about anything that really mattered. She stepped aside, allowing me to walk in. But the moment I crossed the threshold, I could feel the walls between us. The coldness in the air wasn't just from the lack of warmth in the room. It was from the distance that had grown between us over the past few months. I didn't know where to start. Part of me wanted to ask why, to scream at her, to make her feel the way I did, broken, betrayed, lost. But I forced myself to take a breath. "Why?" I finally said, my voice quieter than I expected. "Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you talk to me about the changes to the trust? Why did you do this?" Her eyes flickered, but she quickly recovered, putting on that mask, the one she'd perfected so well. "I didn't think it was necessary," she said, almost too calmly. "It was just something I had to take care of. For the kids, for the future." Her words were so rehearsed, so practiced, that they felt empty. There was no emotion behind them, no honesty. I could tell she was trying to justify her actions, but it didn't feel real. "For the kids?" I echoed, frustration rising in my chest. "This isn't about the kids. This is about you making decisions without me, without even consulting me. I thought we were partners, equals in this." My voice cracked at the end, but I didn't care. She shifted, looking away, avoiding my gaze. "You're making this harder than it needs to be. I just did what I thought was best. It's all for the best, for our family's future." It felt like I was speaking a different language. I wanted to scream that it wasn't about the future or the trust or the money. It was about the us that we had built. It was about the love and respect I had given her, and how that had meant nothing in the end. "Is that what you really think?" I asked, my voice shaking with anger and hurt. "That this is just some business decision? You didn't even think? It was worth telling me. How could you, after everything, how could you betray me like this?" She flinched, her eyes flickering with something I couldn't place: regret, guilt, or maybe just indifference. I wasn't trying to hurt you, okay? She snapped, her voice rising now. I was just trying to fix things. I thought if I did this, if I made sure everything was secure, it would all work out. I didn't want to burden you with it. It's burdened me? Was that really her excuse? You didn't want to burden me? I repeated, incredulous. This isn't just about the damn trust. It's about us. You shut me out, kept me in the dark. And you took something that should have been ours to decide, together. Her face hardened, and she crossed her arms defensively. I did what I had to do. I didn't ask for your permission because I didn't think it was necessary. I thought you'd understand, eventually. The words felt like a slap. I thought I'd understood her, that we'd understood each other. But this wasn't the woman I had married. This wasn't the woman who promised we would always make decisions together, who swore we would face everything together. I shook. My head, the frustration building, my heart pounding in my chest. You thought I'd understand? You thought I'd just let you make these decisions for both of us without even talking to me first. She didn't answer. She just stood there, silent, watching me with those same cold eyes that had once filled me with warmth. I didn't know what else to say. What could I say? There was no apology, no remorse in her eyes, just a cold justification, a wall that I couldn't break down. I turned away. The weight of the conversation settling heavily on my shoulders. There was no closure here, no resolution. Just more questions, more confusion, more pain. I didn't want to leave, but I couldn't stay either. I had to get out. I had to find some air, something to breathe, as I walked out the door. I felt like I was walking away from everything I had known, everything I had loved. And with each step, the distance between us seemed to grow even further. The first few weeks after that conversation were the hardest. I felt like I was drowning, each day dragging me further into a darkness I didn't know how to escape. I had been broken not just by the betrayal, but by the realization that the life I had built, the future I had dreamed of, was crumbling before my eyes. I tried to push through it. I went through the motions of daily life-work routines, small. Talk with friends, but everything felt like a facade. I wasn't me. I was just a shell, pretending to exist while the pieces of my world shattered. But I knew I couldn't stay like this forever, so I did the one thing I never thought I would have to do. I reached out for help. I called a therapist. I didn't even think twice. I knew that if I didn't do something, I was going to lose myself completely. The first session was brutal. I walked into that small office, feeling like I was walking into a battlefield. I didn't want to talk. I didn't want to open up to a stranger about my pain. But I did. It was the hardest thing I've ever done, sitting there spilling the raw truth about everything. The betrayal, the heartbreak, the anger, the guilt I carried. I felt exposed. But with each session, I began to find pieces of myself again. It wasn't easy, it wasn't quick, but it was real. The therapist helped me untangle the mess of emotions that had been building up inside me. We worked through the anger, the hurt, and eventually the grief. For the first time, I realized that it wasn't just about the betrayal. It was about me. I had lost myself in the relationship, in the marriage, in the person I thought I was. I had put so much of myself into trying to make it work that I had forgotten who I was when it wasn't working. I had to rediscover me again. Along with therapy, I started reconnecting with the people who mattered most, my family, my old friends. It was a slow process. Some days I felt like an outsider in my own life. But the more I reached out, the more I realized that I wasn't alone. I had people who cared about me, who supported me, reminded me that I was worthy of love and happiness, even when I couldn't see it for myself. I spent more time doing the things that brought me painstaking walks. Reading, working on old hobbies I had forgotten about. I began to feel alive again piece by piece. The numbness, the emptiness didn't disappear overnight, but it started to fade. Slowly, the pain became more manageable. I began to feel the weight of the world on my shoulders a little less with each passing day. It wasn't just about moving on. It was about rebuilding. I wasn't the same person I was before the betrayal, but I didn't want to be. I had grown. I had learned things about myself that I never knew. I had learned what it meant to be strong, even when it felt like the world was falling apart, and I began to understand that healing wasn't a destination, it was a journey. One that I had to take on my own, at my own pace, in my own way. With time, I started to see myself differently. I wasn't just a man who had been betrayed, I was someone who had faced pain and come through it. I had been broken, but I had rebuilt myself, stronger than before. I realized that, despite everything, I was still capable of love, of trust, of happiness. Maybe not with her, maybe not in the same way I thought I could. But in the future, with myself, with others, with the life I was creating for myself, the road wasn't easy and it wasn't perfect. But with each step, I grew stronger. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was finding myself against someone worthy of peace, worthy of healing, and worthy of a future that I could build on my own terms. It's funny how time has a way of shifting your perspective. A year has passed since everything came crashing down. The betrayal, the heartache, the feeling that I was standing in the ruins of my life. And looking back, I can see just how far I've come. I never expected to be here. I never expected to find peace after everything that happened, after everything that was taken from me. But peace is a strange thing. It doesn't always come in the way we expect. Sometimes it arrives quietly in small moments. Sometimes it's a choice, not a feeling. I've learned a lot over the past year about pain, about strength, about trust. Trust is something I thought I understood. I thought it was a bond that could never be broken. But the truth is, trust is fragile. It can be shattered in an instant. And while it's difficult to rebuild, it's possible, not with the same person necessarily, but with yourself. You can rebuild trust in who you are, in your own worth, even when the world around you tells you that you don't matter. I've also learned that self-worth isn't something that's defined by someone else's actions. For a long time, I thought my value was tied to my relationship, to the love I thought I shared. But I've come to realize that my worth isn't dependent on anyone's approval or decisions. It's something I have to find within myself. Can't give someone else the power to define who I am, and as much as I've tried to understand why she did what she did, I've had to accept that some answers may never come. I don't know why she changed the trust, why she shut me out. I don't know why she couldn't be honest with me. And for a while, that uncertainty drove me crazy. I wanted closure. I wanted answers. But now, I realize that closure doesn't always come with a clear explanation. Sometimes, you have to create your own closure. You have to let go of the need for answers and make peace with the fact that the past is behind you. What matters now is how I move forward. What matters is that I've survived this, that I've learned to live again, that I've rebuilt the pieces of myself that I thought were lost forever. I won't lie, the pain still lingers sometimes. There are days when I catch myself thinking about what could have been, about the life I thought we would have, and there are moments when I still wonder if I'll ever get the answers I need. But those moments are fewer now. And with each passing day, they fade a little more. I don't need to understand everything, not anymore. What I need is to look ahead. To embrace the person I've become, the person who can face challenges without being defined by the past. I've learned that healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means accepting, moving forward, and finding strength in the scars. And maybe that's what matters most. That I'm still here, still standing, still capable of loving and living. Without all the answers, I don't know what the future holds. I don't know if I'll ever truly understand why things happened the way they did, but I do know this: I'm at peace with it. I'm at peace with me, and that's enough.